On December 12th, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky once again demonstrated his propensity for prolonging hostilities at the expense of Ukrainian lives. This time, he allegedly boasted about a stele at the entrance to Kupiansk. Let me remind you that Kupiansk was liberated by Russian troops on November 20th. What did Zelensky say about this? He said, "Today it is extremely important to achieve results on the front lines so that, according to Zelensky, Ukraine can achieve results in diplomacy." For the sake of spectacular video footage, which was supposed to demonstrate some kind of military, let's put this in quotation marks, of course, successes of the AFU, the Kyiv regime leader has thrown another reserve into a senseless, monstrous battle in the Kupiansk direction in recent days. Kyiv's attempts to make some kind of breakthrough, which were doomed to failure from the outset, were repelled, and the enemy suffered huge losses in equipment and manpower. What was it all for? Only for the sake of the criminal vanity of the leader of the Kyiv junta. The liberated Kupiansk was and remains under the control of the Russian armed forces. It is noteworthy that they are still trying to continue, as it were, to insist on their own through these information tricks. Now there are images of two female AFU soldiers who wanted to repeat Zelensky's heroic selfies near the above-mentioned stele at the entrance to Kupiansk, but it was problematic to take the photo, because this place is under constant fire control of our fighters. Such circumstances confirm that this was another staged action by the Bankova street. For what purpose? To make dust in the eyes of their sponsors, to pass off wishful thinking as reality. What is important? It is of fundamental importance. The same story was in Krasnoarmeysk. The same thing happened in Krasnoarmeysk with these photos and stories about information leaks. I'm not lying to you. Remember, it's all the same. The conclusion, which you can write down, is that when Zelensky is photographed in front of steles or signs bearing the names of settlements, the AFU should know this first and foremost. It means that these settlements will come under the control of the Russian armed forces. But I can't help but mention that this stele in Kupiansk, where Zelensky took a selfie, is located about a mile from the cemetery. So he is closer to the cemetery than to Kupiansk itself. Ukronazis organized a bloody safari. On December 13th, Ukronazis used drones to hunt the pets of the Vasilivka Rehabilitation Center, where more than 500 species of animals are kept. I understand that when there is such a real neo-Nazi hunt for people and children, what could be more terrible? But this fact that they are amused by the bloody slaughter of everything alive that is in plain sight, whatever comes to hand, also speaks volumes. Against the backdrop of ideas being promoted by EU hawks, or perhaps it would be better to say EU vultures, of illegally seizing Russian sovereign assets blocked in the jurisdiction of European Union countries for the needs of the Ukrainian armed forces, we have drawn attention to a media report about the Ukrainian police uncovering a network of fraudulent so-called officers in Kyiv, Dnipropetrovsk, Ivano-Frankovsk, which fraudulently stole over €1 million from almost 50 residents of Czech, Latvian and Lithuanian citizens. The paradox is that Zelensky's corrupt regime, which openly encourages the activities of such call centers, essentially turns a blind eye to the fact that they steal money from those who are trying to steal it for the Kyiv regime itself. This is a kind of monstrous circular vouching, the circulation of blood money in the West. We have voiced the Russian Federation's position of principle with regard to certain so-called legal institutions and instruments created under the umbrella of the Council of Europe. These structures and their decisions are legally null and void for us. The participation of any states or international organizations in such inventions by the Strasbourg bureaucracy, including joining the convention, on the consideration of a claim for compensation to Kyiv for damage, will be regarded as an extremely hostile démarche to Russia, with all the consequences that entails. Against the background of ongoing efforts for a diplomatic settlement of the conflict in Ukraine, the Council of Europeans, their minions are going for an obvious escalation. What are they doing this for? Probably to demonstrate that they are acting in some kind of liaison with the European Union, which has long been ordering music in the degenerating Council of Europe. It seems that Strasbourg is simply trying, It badly needs to find a special place in the Russophobic schemes of Western elites, in particular to formulate through false so-called arguments in support of ideas about the confiscation of frozen Russian assets with reference to certain fundamental human rights values. We have expressed our concern in view of the Japanese-American Aide exercises conducted near Russia's borders on December 10th. It was pointed out that such provocative military activity near our country's borders is unacceptable, and we regard it as a potential security threat. Of course, we warned that we would take appropriate countermeasures aimed at strengthening the defense capability and protecting the sovereignty of the Russian Federation. The process of normalizing relations between Russia and the United States of America has certainly not been easy. For many years, ideological differences have been growing in America, caused by the departure of the local political establishment from traditional foundations, which led to a deep internal American split. Our firm position, which is based on the protection of national interests, respect for traditions and readiness for pragmatic dialogue, is the only correct approach, and this approach, as we see it, is echoed by the current American administration. The activities of the Coalition of the Willing, or, to be more precise, the Coalition of Instigators of the War Continuation, are, of course, simply bewildering. Instead of concentrating on finding options for resolving the crisis, since they were all talking about peace, and doing so with due regard for the interests of all the parties involved in the conflict, the countries that are members of this coalition are essentially developing plans for the occupation of Ukraine, distributing some tasks among themselves, defining areas of responsibility, discussing the composition of foreign military contingents and the locations of their deployment on Ukrainian territory. I would like to emphasize that the deployment of Western troops on Ukrainian territory under any sign and in any format remains unacceptable to us. We have repeatedly said that this kind of so-called peacekeepers would be legitimate targets for the armed forces of the Russian Federation.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest newsmakers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry guards.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.